Good afternoon. In my native language, I would say to you, Masikati Maskwerasei, which literally translated means, good afternoon, how has been your day? You are all looking at the stage for me, but you were looking in the wrong place. Ubuntu. Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu literally translated means a person is only a person through other people. So before I start, I would like you to look to your left and look to your right. And if you don't know the person you're sitting next to, look them in the eye, introduce yourself, find out their name, find out where they're from, because I will be sharing with you an African philosophy, which is very close to my heart. So my full name is Getrude Matshe. Did not want to challenge DK with all my names, but I was born on one of the most fascinating continents in the world. Africa is a harsh continent, but it prepares you to live anywhere. Up until the 22nd of April 2004, I had not quite known what my life purpose was. It was 2 weeks before the launch of my first book, and I woke up that morning with words in my head that had to go down on paper. And I went to my computer and I started writing. And I realized at that point that my voice, my body, my very being in this incarnation is merely a channel the Creator is using to awaken the world. A lot of people ask me, Gertrude, are you the typical African woman? I can tell you bluntly now that no, I am not. What I do know is that I was born to be her voice and the voice of her children. Let me tell you a little bit about the typical African woman. In my country, and when I say my country, I'm referring to the continent of Africa, from north to south. The typical African woman is at the bottom of the food chain. The typical African woman is always the last to eat. Her role in society is to bear the children, fetch the water, fetch the firewood, make the fire, prepare the fields for sowing, sow the seed, and harvest. And in most situations, she does this single-handedly. And at the end of her exhausting day, she is the last to eat the leftovers of her prepared meals. In my country, the typical African woman is sometimes physically and psychologically abused. In times of war, she is raped, and she personifies the downtrodden human being. Now, while all this is happening to her, she asks you, where are you, my father, when my education is sacrificed? Where are you, my brother, when I toil in the field and in the kitchen? Where are you, my mother, when my genitals are cut from my body with a sharp knife? Where are you, my sister? Where are you, my aunt? It is your hands, your strength that pins me down. In times of war, when I am gang raped, sometimes by 5, 6, 10 men, where are you, my father, when I am violated? Where are you, my God? Where are you, my fellow human beings? Why do you allow this to happen to me? Now, because I'm not the typical African woman, I want to share with you today the spiritual journey that has been my life. I was born in a small village called Wedza on the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe and Mozambique. It is the kind of place where you are born there, you will die there, you'll amount to absolutely nothing. But I was blessed to have two amazing parents who realized that if they educated their children, we would get out of poverty. So from the age of 6, my mother taught me how to use my hands. I was taught how to knit, how to sew, how to crochet, how to fabric paint. And we would make crafts and go and sell in all the white neighborhoods. And from the age of 6, I went to private school. I got a good education. And that's how I got to New Zealand. So, you must be wondering how I got here. I keep telling people the wind blew me here. I had no intention to come to Wellington. But through a weird series of little coincidences, I missed a flight going to America just before September 11. I was sent back to Zimbabwe, ended up in Wellington because I had a cousin who was living in Karori, who says she was surfing on the internet one day, picked up my name, wrote me a one-line email saying, "Gertrude, where are you? You need to leave Zimbabwe. Come to New Zealand, you won't regret it." So as an act of faith, we sold everything we owned, and I got to Wellington on the 1st of November 2001. And from the day I landed in this city, my life has been magical. I found a job working as a systems analyst in Lower Hutt, and it was awesome. But my husband could not get work here because he was a doctor. He had to wait 1 year to get accreditation with the Medical Council of New Zealand. So he found a job in Australia, in Mount Isa. When he got to Queensland, he called home. He said, "Gertrude, stay where you are." He said they had put him in a rural outpost. There wasn't even a road to this place. So he commuted and came home once a month for the first year. And I was losing it. I had 3 kids under the age of 12. And I approached my boss one day to see if I could renegotiate my work hours so I could work from home in the afternoon, go to the office in the morning. The day I approached my boss, he was in a very bad mood. This man stood in his office and said, "Gertrude, you don't have a choice. It's either you stay or you go." And I stood in this man's office and I realized that he was forcing me to choose between my children and work, and my babies are not negotiable. So I quit my job, went back to my art, started painting my fabric. I painted 100 meters of material. I went all over Wellington trying to sell this fabric. The fabric would not sell. Everywhere I went, people would look at it and say, "It's beautiful, but can you paint ferns?" Or, "Can you paint fish?" I come from a landlocked country. I was painting zebras and giraffes and African animals and trying to sell an African product, and it wasn't working. Then one night I had a dream. I dreamt of my grandmother who had died 10 years before this, but she is my spiritual guide. She came to me speaking fluent English. She hated English, but she stood there with her hands on her hips and she said to me, "Getrude, if you have a problem, break it up into small pieces." 2 a.m. in the morning, that dream made no sense. When I woke up, I realized what the dream meant. I got my scissors and I cut the fabric into small pieces and I started making cushions. I made 1,000 cushions and sold 1,000 cushions in 3 months using a website. My first business in New Zealand was a small shop that sold hand-painted cushions. It was absolutely magical. My kids could walk home from school and come to the shop in the afternoon. My next company was created because of my husband. When he was job hunting, I saw hundreds of vacancies for health professionals in New Zealand. So I wrote back to Africa to all our friends, told them where we were. 5 of my husband's friends said, "Yes, we'll come to New Zealand." I placed 5 doctors and have been in business since 2002. I had had so many opportunities by being in this city. I went to a presentation where Peter Jackson's staff were talking about how they made Lord of the Rings. And I'm sitting in the audience thinking, gosh, I wouldn't mind acting in one of Peter Jackson's films. So when we had the question-answer session, I put up my hand and I asked the question. I said, "Look, I know you're working on new movies. How can I take part? I used to be an actress in Zimbabwe." They told me to email my CV, which I did. 2 days later, I was cast to take part in King Kong. And when I went for my wardrobe fitting, I found out that they were looking for 350 African extras for one scene. And I thought, shoot, this is a business. And I said, "Look, if I come up with 350 people, I would like to present it to you as a business case." They said, "Sure, come on Tuesday." I met this man on a Thursday. I had one weekend to run around Wellington with a digital camera hitting on anyone brown. I stopped Indian people, Maori people. They had to spray paint us one color so we looked like we were one tribe. And I turned that into a business, and I have a casting agency that caters for ethnic minority people for film and advertising. The real reason why I'm here is because of this woman. Christmas 2004, Oprah went to South Africa. I was having Christmas lunch. My parents had come from Zimbabwe for the first time, and a girlfriend called me and said, "Gertrude, switch on the TV, Oprah's in South Africa." And there she stood on a soccer field full of children. She had 50,000 AIDS orphans on that soccer field. And when she opened up her hands, she said, "This is the lost generation of Africa. These are kids who will never get to go to school. They've either lost one parent or both because of AIDS. Africa needs help." And that show took me back home. I remembered what I left behind. I sat with my mum, and I said, "Let's do a head count of the orphaned children on our side of the family." We counted 49. I called my mother-in-law, did a head count on her side, another 40. And I said to my husband, I have to find a way that we can make money that we can give away unconditionally. So I finished writing my first book and started raising money by selling this book. I started looking at the children's faces, and I started imagining that, what if the scientists will find the cure for AIDS is in one of these kids? What if I took part in helping raise the future Nelson Mandela for Africa? And that's what I've been doing for the last 9 years. The Mayor of Wellington launched my book in the Mayor's Chambers. The book is called Born on the Continent, Ubuntu. And what I did is I illustrated the Ubuntu philosophy through the stories and the people that I met. We sleepwalk through life most of the time. We meet people sitting next to us, we never find out who they are. In Africa, when you meet someone, you look them in the eye, you greet them, you acknowledge their humanity. You will never bump into another human being and not acknowledge their humanity and their presence. So that became my story. I am because you are. The human race is one. In Ubuntu, there is no you, there is no me, there is only we. My grandmother used to say that the world's problems are very simple. If every single person on this planet heard that there is an earthquake in Haiti, and we each gave $1 to Haiti, that would be a country restored in one day. Why are we dying of starvation in the developing world, and you are dying of obesity in the developed world? There is enough. There is enough in this universe to go round, but we have forgotten this. So my project took me on a journey. My friends here in New Zealand agreed to come with me for the first time to Zimbabwe. It was when the recession hit. I could not fundraise. There was no money to send back home. And I challenged these 3 ladies to raise $10,000 each and come on a magical trip. I turned that into another business. It's called Walk on the Wild Side Tours. But when we got to Zimbabwe, we managed to restore the primary school where my husband went to school and where his father used to teach. There are 280 kids in this school. 70% have either lost one parent or both. We managed to paint the school. The community came. We started giving people microloans to make bricks. All the women in the community who know how to sew have been taught to make the school uniforms for the kids. And it's now a project that is lifting an entire community from the grassroots level up. We are now supporting an orphanage in Bulawayo that has under 12-year-olds. The baby that I'm holding in the corner died 2 weeks after I got back to New Zealand. And I keep looking at that picture as a reminder that I have to keep going. We end our trip after 10 days of living in a community with no electricity, no running water in the Victoria Falls. You go bungee jumping off the Victoria Falls Bridge. I've done it 3 times on the same day. You get this adrenaline rush, and you just want to go back for a second hit, for a third hit. My husband and kids had to stop me the 4th time. You go for a walk in the bush with these amazing animals. Africa is a fascinating place. It's the only place in the world where you can get so close to nature. There's a protocol on how to walk with these lions. You have to walk behind them, not in front, otherwise you'll lunge. And we end our trip teaching you all kinds of things in terms of our culture. We do the game drives at night and at day. And we all come back to New Zealand, and you get your tribal markings, and you become part of our tribe. This is my baby brother. He was born when I was 13 years old, and I remember Mum would put this baby on my back, and I'll look after him for her. But he died of AIDS in March 2009. By the time I got to Zimbabwe, my brother was 6'2". He was 48 kgs in weight. And I had the honor of nursing him before he died. And the gift he gave me was that he showed me a psychological side to AIDS that I had not seen. This disease is more psychological than it is physical. And as a people, as the African people, we have bought the story that if you are HIV positive, you're going to die. That is why we're dying by the thousands. And I realize now, while I'm in New Zealand, that I have to go back to Africa to tell a different story. I have to help my people change their minds around this disease. So I went back to school. I did a course at Avalon Studios, and I started working on a movie script based on my life and based on the AIDS story. This movie is going to win 8 Oscars. I made a decision when I started 7 years ago that I am the first African person to write, direct, and produce an Oscar award-winning screenplay. When I first said this, I was shaking in my shoes. When I said it a second time, it felt so good. I said it the 3rd time, it felt so real. And now all I have to do is finish writing the script. AIDS is a consciousness. Poverty is a consciousness. Each time I go back to Zimbabwe, I realize that we are sitting on the acres of diamonds, and we don't even recognize it. Somewhere in our history, we were told that we are poor, and we believed it. I come from the richest continent in the world, and I am going to go back to tell a different story. Thank you.